How did this deck win a tournament? Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, I decided to take a tournament winning deck list. If you didn't watch my previous video, I did a rundown of the two biggest tournaments that we just had, and this deck list by Karibo just won the MCS, the MBT one, not the DK'd one. Every time you look at a branded list, it just looks worse and worse, doesn't it? So I'm going to do the explanation and give you a quick rundown of the card by card. And now, obviously, I'm not the best branded player. If you want to watch real skill, go watch Karibo. In the MCS, it was absolutely phenomenal, and it taught me so much about branded and how this deck functions. And yeah, I'm just going to quickly do the card by card. Now, we've seen 60 card branded lists. That's nothing special. But this build in particular is a bit interesting. First and foremost, we're going to start off with the actual non-engine pieces, that being triple Droll and Lockbird, triple Maxi, triple Ash Blossom, and that's basically it. There's a few other cards, the one Daruma Karma Cannon for triple Tactics Thrust, which of course we're playing 3 of, and one Herald of the Abyss. That is all the non-engine. In a 60 card list, that is all the non-engine. It is mostly gas, and this is basically half and half non-engine. So yeah, there's a lot of just gas. Now, playing triple Droll does make sense, especially in a tournament where you're expecting things like Pearly to be as prevalent. I would probably say that this isn't as useful, but for the Duelist Cup, maybe it is, and maybe you're expecting more Pearly, so there's that. It's also not great against like Kashtira or the like, but it's still pretty decent. So yeah, honestly, great cards. Don't need to explain this. We're also playing 2 Called By, forgot to mention that, but there you go. Triple Tactics Thrust, as I mentioned. The one Herald of the Abyss has the basically only out 2 Pearly, makes sense. But we're also playing Daruma Karma Cannon, which is also another out 2 Pearly stuff, as well as in out 2 just a wide variety of things. If you haven't read this card, if you haven't crafted this card, do so. It's incredible. I'm just going to let you read it real quick. It's insane. It basically gets around every sort of protection because it affects the player and not the cards, which is very, very nice. It also just absolutely hoses links. Basically, if your opponent has like a full board of links, you could just flip this and send them all to the grave. It's very, very strong. So yeah, there you go. Moving on to the rest of the list. It's very strange. There are a lot of one-ofs that are kind of weird, but I'll explain. The one Tragedy actually does make sense. There's lots of ways to see it. There's lots of ways to send it to the graveyard, especially since we can have like Grass or Foolish Burial send it to the graveyard. And then on top of that, if it is in the graveyard, you can add back like a Branded Fusion. It's pretty nice, but it's not too necessary, and it is kind of a brick to see in your hand because you don't want to draw it. We are playing 1 Keeper of Dragon Magic. Now this is very interesting, but basically discard, add something like Fusion Deployment. Yeah, you can add Fusion Deployment. It's a fusion card. Kind of crazy. Obviously add Branded Fusion, add, what is it? I believe there's one other target. I believe. Polymerization, normal spell, or fusion normal spell. I think there's one more. No, I think that is it. I think those are the only ones. So not a lot of targets, but all things considered, it's still great. You discard to add like fusion deployment or what have you. It's also specifically a Dark Dragon. Do keep that in mind. We are playing a quite large stint of Dogmatica cards, that being the 1 Ecclesia, the 1 Fleur-de-Lis, as well as triple Nithir Servant. Now this is very interesting because it locks your extra deck, so why would we be playing this? Well, turns out it only locks your extra deck for the rest of that turn, and more importantly, what it actually does is it allows you to set things like, I don't know, a Branded Banishment, and then just use it on the opponent's turn. You can also set things like Retribution to give you an additional negate, obviously off of the Albion, while also still searching out yourselves the Ecclesia, which then can search out Fleur-de-Lis, which is a monster effect negation, which is pretty good. So it does make sense. I don't know how good this card in particular is, because it does have to specifically send from the extra deck to the grave, which doesn't play very well into Kashtira. I think in a tournament where you're not expecting Kashtira to be as big of an issue, maybe that makes sense. Or especially just being able to be like, yeah, I might just lose this, that's fine. But I would probably cut this down to 2 and play the 3rd Albaz, which we're only playing 2 of. Had a lot of instances where I just wanted that 3rd Albaz. But alas, I'm not the best deck builder, so just copy this, it's fine. But yeah, there were a few times where I wanted the 3rd Albaz. but it is a bit of a brick as well, so playing multiple may be a little bit iffy. Only 2 of that makes sense. 2 Aliber, because we can only play 2. We'd play 3 if we could, because we want as much access to Branded Fusion as we can. The 1 Mercurier, this makes sense. You're mostly searching it off of Lost. You can also banish it in order to, like, get an additional search or what have you. So, it's nice. Double Kit has more access with, more access to Branded Fusion with Aliber. We're also playing double Cartesia, which is pretty cool. This card, if you don't know it, it's very good. It's basically just a quick play polymerization, which is absolutely insane. It's so strong for no reason. Yeah. You can also, like, lock yourself with something like Nadir Servant, get a Blazing Cartesia onto your side of the field, and then just fusion summon during your opponent's turn again. We're also playing very few Bestials, as opposed to what most Bestial branded stuff does. This is more just, like, branded lore stuff. So there's lots of different lore cards. But yeah, we're only playing 1 Magnuma, triple Saronir, and 1 Lubellion, which is kind of strange. But Saronir just happens to be the best one, being able to send Retribution or Branded Fusion. I believe it can send Branded Fusion. Yeah. So yeah, lots of really good cards that it can send to the graveyard, as well as just being able to send Lubellion, which Lubellion can then revive itself to go for Beast. Honestly, it does make sense to only play the 1, given the fact that you don't really want to see it all that often, unless you're sending it to the graveyard and you already have stuff, because basically the only thing it's getting is Beast, and Branded Regained isn't all that great, because the Bestials aren't all that great right now, so we're just playing the good one, which is Saronir, which happens to be at 3, which is crazy. We're also playing triple Albion. Albion sends a card to the graveyard. Turns out that's very good. On top of that, it draws you a card. Again, very good. It just cycles itself back into the deck to draw you a better card. Pretty nice. Just kind of like an easy way to just generate advantage for free. Of course, we're playing the 1 Foolish, the 1 Gold Sark for the Tragedy. We're playing 1 Grass. We're playing 1 Herald as a triple tax target. We're playing triple Fusion Deployment, very, very strong with the Blazing Cartesia, the triple Nadir Servant. The 1 Branded in white, this card is very nice, being able to, like, banish the Fallen of Albaz, or just as basically as an additional way to Fusion Summon, which is very nice, as long as you include a Dragon Monster, which is pretty easy. The 1 Branded Fusion, we'd play more if we could. Triple Tactics Thrust, obviously this card is crazy. The 1 Branded Lost, you basically only ever want to see this if you're searching it. Other than that, you don't really want to see it. Double Called By, because Ash is a pain, so of course we're going to play the Called Bys. The double Branded Opening, the triple Branded in High Spirits. This card is also very nice, being able to, like, pitch a card from your hand, or more specifically, just being able to send a card from your extra deck to the grave, which is very, very nice. It also adds itself back to the hand to recur that additional advantage as well. The 1 Branded in red, this is honestly very interesting, but 1 Branded in red and 1 Banishment. Most of the time, I ended up going for Banishment. It just felt so much better 90% of the time. Being able to Fusion Summon it with your opponent's cards are very nice, and the Branded in red wasn't nearly as useful. Yes, it was nice, but it wasn't nearly as important as just, like, having that Branded Banishment, because most of the time, I didn't need the Quick Play spell as much as I needed, like, just the better option. But this was still nice, being able to, like, add a card back to your hand to potentially do something. So, yeah, it does make sense. We're also playing 1 Branded Sword. You just banish it to add back Mercurier or a Fallen of Albaz. That's basically it. If this is banished, you banish this, add it back to your hand. It's great. The Daruma Karma Cannon, 2 Retribution. Not only is its on-field effect good by being able to negate an effect that would special summon a monster, but also the banish effect in the grave is also very nice, to be able to add back something like a Branded Fusion or a Branded in red. Very nice. And then the 1 Branded Beast. As for the extra, this is where things get very interesting, and this is why I'm taking so long explaining this deck, because it's such cool deck building, and it really does solidify, like, how you should be thinking about decks. All of these cards do something very important in a wide variety of situations, right? They're not solely just, like, okay in 1 or 2 situations. They are very good a lot of the time. So there you go. But also, a lot of them are bricks, right? So that's why we're playing 60. To see less of those, but to still be able to see them. As for the extra deck, we're playing 1 Dragostapelia. Very easy to make. We're playing 1 Borreload Furious Dragon. This card is crazy. It's just Scrap Dragon at quick effect speed, which is very, very strong. Especially if you can protect your own monster. That's basically it. That's all that it needs to be, and it's great. 1 Titaniclad, because we are playing the Dogmaticas, it does make more sense to play the Titaniclad, and it can help you push for lethal very much. Sprint, to be able to utilize its effect, or not its effect, its summoning condition, to basically utilize it as an additional Mirror Jade. If your opponent just summons like a Labyrinth monster, for example, if that was summoned that turn, you could special summon the Albaz from your, or off of your Titaniclad, in order to, in the end phase, just like summon this guy. It's also able to search out Mercurial, if I believe. Yeah, right? No, sorry, it's bringing. It searches out the Fallen of Albaz. Never mind. But still very good. We're playing 2 Albion, pretty self-explanatory, 2 Mirror Jade, 1 Quiritis, because we can summon it off of the Granganol. We can also just hard summon it, so there you go. The 1 Lubellion, I mean, it shuffles itself back, pretty self-explanatory. 1 Albalenetis, this is pretty much in here for Dragon Link. It also is just nice to be able to, like, search out a Polymerization or Fusion spell. The 1 Rindbrum, pretty self-explanatory. The 1 Guardian Chimera, the 1 Granganol, and 1 Verte. Guardian Chimera is interesting because basically the only reason to summon this, or the only way to summon this really, is off of like a spell. But it's really good with Branded in Red. Being able to like Branded in Red to summon the Guardian Chimera is so very powerful. Sure, you could super polymerization your opponent, maybe, with Branded Banishment, or you could just like wipe their field with Guardian Chimera and Branded in Red. So that's why we're playing those. Anyway, that's it for the deck. Let's hop into the replays and show you how this deck performed. Alright, so here we are with a kind of mid-hand. Well, we have the Albion. Hopefully it gets us something. We're going to send the Retribution, and Foolish Burial is very good. We're going to send a Tragedy here. Tragedy will then, of course, grab the Aluber. Aluber is then going to be normal summon, activate the effects to grab up the Branded Fusion, and it resolves. Fantastic. We're going to go for the Albion here. Activate the Albion. We're going to banish 2 here in order to go for it. Lubellion. Now, I make a bit of a mistake here. The biggest thing is I shouldn't have banished the Tragedy. I should have banished the Aluber. I got a bit greedy, and I'm like, well, obviously I want the monster on field. The monster on field doesn't do anything. The monster in grave does a lot more. Keeping the Tragedy in the graveyard would have allowed me a lot more access during the next turn to kind of have more for myself. As well as just being able to like have an additional target in my graveyard that I kind of needed, as you will see later. If I set like a Branded Banishment or a Branded in Red, I don't really have a target currently in my graveyard, so it would have been a much better idea to keep that Tragedy. And this is something that you will probably learn the more you play the deck. This was, I hadn't played it much, so that is a minor mistake. We're going to go for the Mirror Jade here, in the extra monster zone, and then of course since we sent the Lubellion, we're going to send the Albion to the graveyard for the Lubellion. We're going to activate the Lubellion, activate the Branded Beast, then going to go and activate the Retribution to grab up the Branded Fusion. Here we can now go for the Ecclesia, because we don't need our extra deck anymore, and grab up the Fleur-de-Lis. Fleur-de-Lis is now going to be able to allow us additional negate on our opponent's turn. We're also going to go for the Albion here to set Retribution. Since we already have the Daruma Karma Cannon, we have Retribution, we have the Fleur-de-Lis, we have the Mirror Jade, and we have the Beast. So honestly, it feels pretty good. It could be a little bit better. We could have the Tragedy engraved instead of the Aluber on field, but alas, it's not really that big of a deal. We also have Droll and Lockbird, which is what I kept instead of the Ash Blossom. I know, kind of crazy, but I figured, hey, they didn't Ash me, or they didn't Maxi me. I didn't need to use the Ash. I'll keep the Droll, and you know, the rest of the cards in my hand seems pretty good. And at this point, I'm like, oh yeah, this Droll is fantastic. So they're going to draw a card, and I'm like, no more drawing. They're going to special summon out the Sharnga, and I go, okay, I'm not allowing you to go into a 10, so I'm going to immediately deal with this Bigfoot, and I'm also just going to banish the Sharnga. It can be kind of an issue. And at that point, my opponent concedes. I think the writing is basically on the wall. There's not really a whole lot more that they can do. They just got Drolled. It's not like they can go for, or they can actually utilize their dangers, because if they do, they're basically down to 2 cards in hand, even if their danger does hit, you know, so because they can't draw. So honestly, just phenomenal setup there. That is how the deck functions, right? A single Branded Fusion basically got me there. Alright, now once again we are going first, but I wanted to show you this game because it shows you how powerful 1, Grass is, but 2, how good this deck actually is, and you'll see why in a second. So here we're gonna start off here. I'm basically just like trying to bait out an Ash, or like see if they have an Ash. They don't, so I go for the max, or for the Grass here. We're gonna hit the Tragedy as well as the Sarnir, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have gone for the Tragedy there, so that I could have added back something like the Branded Fusion, which we did end up milling, which was also the next card, which is very funny. We're going to send the Retribution. I believe we already had a Retribution, but I sent another one, and we grab the Alubert. I'm going to send it to the graveyard, the Branded and High Spirits off of the Alubert, or off of the Albion, and I'm like, that's fine. We're now going to go for the Retribution to grab up that Branded Fusion. And again, at this point, we basically know that they don't have an Ash. So we're going to grab it to our hand the Lost. We're going to activate the Lost here. And then we're going to go for the Branded Fusion to grab up the Albion. We send the Cartesia because we didn't already have one in the grave. So we're going to go for the Lost. We're also going to go for the Albion. I believe this is how you're supposed to chain it. Chaining 1 is the Lost, because I think it chains Lost. Anyway, we're going to banish the Mercurier as well as the Albaz, in order to go for the Lubellion. Lubellion effect will activate. We're also going to search. We're also going to activate the sword that was milled in order to grab up the Mercurier. So now we have that Mercurier as an additional negate, which will matter. Keep that in mind. So we're going to add back the Mercurier to our hand, and then we're going to go for the Lubellion, shuffle back the Albaz in order to go for Mirror Jade. We're also going to add to our hand off of, I believe, oh, it was Mercurier. We're going to add the Albion, just as like an additional thing. There wasn't really any better targets. We're going to now go for the Bestial Magnamut by banishing a card, as well as the Bestial Lubellion. We also have Beast Engraved, so we can't really do anything there. We're going to go Cartesia and Fusion Summon, utilizing the Albion in our hand. That's why I searched it. I needed a Dark Dragon. So now we can go for the Borreload Furious Dragon. We're going to set the Branded and High Spirits, then we're going to set the Branded Banishment, and honestly, this is a phenomenal hand. We also add back the Saronir, as well as the Branded and High Spirits, as well as the Cartesia. So yeah, we literally just refilled our hand. We now have 5 cards in hand once again, and this whole field. Cool. Now, this is what I think makes this deck so very powerful. We have the Branded Banishment, we also have Branded and High Spirits, so that's not really that big of a deal, but we have a Pop, we have a Banish, we have a Fusion Summon on our opponent's turn. We have the Mercurier. We have another Fusion Summon on our opponent's turn, as well as the ability to super polymerize, basically using them. We have an additional search if we do end up doing that. And then on top of that, we have Droll and Lockbird, as well as Saronir. So it seems pretty good. And then on top of that, on top of all of that, we have Retribution to add back the Branded Fusion, which is currently in our graveyard. So, you know, pretty good. Anyway, they're going to go immediately to the battle phase, and they're going to activate the Evenly Matched. And I'm like, okay, cool, that's fine. I'm going to be able to keep this Branded Banishment and at least do something off of it. I believe I still have the, I have the Tragedy engraved. So I'm like, yeah, that's totally fine. I'm going to activate the Furious Dragon here because it's basically DPE, and I'll be able to pop 2 cards. Wrong. You target a card your opponent controls. Oh! Whoopsie. Well, now my infield is entirely gone. So this is a big mistake from me. I thought this worked more like DPE, and I could pop 2 of my own cards and just be like, okay, let's get these into the graveyard. Not how that works. That's a big misplay from me. I'm like, okay, that's still fine. I'm still going to activate a few other things. We're going to go for the Mirror Jade here. I send the Titanic Lad. The reason for this is because during the end phase, if they do not kill me, which is highly likely, given the fact that they just went to the battle phase, if they don't kill me, I get to go for the Albaz in order to special summon it, pitch a card, and fusion summon. So it seems pretty good. I'm also going to go for the Branded and High Spirits, revealing the Saronir just to send in Albion to the graveyard to get an additional card during the next turn. I'm going to keep the Saronir in my hand, though, so I'm not going to send to search out an Albaz. That's fine. I'm going to banish the Mirror Jade, which is whatever. I also pop the Borreload Furious because, I don't know, that's fine. And then banish my whole field because I'm stupid, and I don't get the banishment. That's fine. They reveal that they're on Pearly, and I'm like, okay, this Droll and Lockbird will resolve, and it'll be fine. And of course, they have the call by. Like, okay. Sure. Maybe I can do something here. It's not looking good. They go for the My Friend Pearly. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Out comes the Delicious. They're going to activate the Delicious. That's fine. They just special summon the Pearly by pitching the Pearly. They're going to activate the Pearly, and they see another... well, okay. Out comes Pretty. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Nothing I can really do about that. Out comes the Plump, and I'm like, okay. Here's something interesting. If they go for the Plump, 100% of the time, they're going to be a bad player. They're going to be like, oh, I'm going to target that Branded Fusion in your graveyard. Well, they forget I have a second Retribution in my grave, which means that I can just grab my Branded Fusion, and now they have 1 less material, which makes them have 3 materials. And then I just need to block 1 of the cards in their hand. If all 3 of them are quick plays, I just need to block 1 of them with this Saronir, which I absolutely can do because they have a Pearly. So they're going to go for the plump here. They're going to target my branded fusion as well as my branded opening. I'm like, nope, that fusion is mine. You can have that other material. That's totally fine. Here's the thing. Had they just targeted 2 of their own cards in their grave, I probably lose to Noir. I can't really beat a Noir at this point. But they decided to misplay and grab up their deserts. They're going to go for the pretty memory here. I'm like, no, no, no. That's not allowed. You do not get to attach another material to this plump. Now, to be fair, had they just attached 1 additional material, I probably still would have won that game because they can't really do anything off of that 4 material plump. But even then, it's still the right play to go for the Sarnier to prevent them from grabbing an additional card. Anyway, I go for the Albaz during the end phase to Fusion Sun, and of course, we go for the Mirror Jade. Now here they do get to activate the My Friend Pearly. I'm like, that's fine. You only get 2 additional cards. You don't get that full 3. And it's during the end phase, so I'm like, that's totally fine. I'm also going to grab the Branded in Red to hand. Now, I don't know. I just grabbed it to hand. It felt like the best card. We're going to send another card to the graveyard. My opponent will go for the Maxi, and I'll go, no, Mercurier. So there's that. We're going to go for the Branded in Red here. We're going to add back the Albaz, and then we're going to Fusion Summon into a Lubellion, because we did end up shuffling this back, so that's pretty nice. Well, I'm actually going to pitch the Branded Fusion to the graveyard, trust, in order to Fusion Summon into a Ringebrum, and then we are going to activate the effect of our Tragedy in Grave to add back that Branded Fusion, because the Branded Fusion was dead previously, and we didn't actually have an ability to use it, because we didn't have an Albaz in our deck or on our field. So now we can go for the Albaz here and go for the Alba Lanisis, and at this point the game is over. We can special summon out the Cartesia and just go to battle. I'm pretty sure that this is a Yeep, and I'm like, that's totally fine. But yeah, there you go. Well over lethal. Absolutely insane deck. This is crazy. Alright, here we are going second, and I just want to remind you that last game, I got evenly matched for my entire field. That's all. I just wanted to remind you of that. This deck is insane. So, we reveal, or my opponent reveals that they are on Labyrinth. I can't do anything about that. That's fine. You get your Q Clock. You get your big welcome. That's okay. Basically, my goal is to... There's not really anything that I can realistically do here. Out comes the Q Clock. They're going to go for the big welcome. And I'm like, okay, I'm actually going to activate my Magnemite here, just in case they decide to snipe my Magnemite. I'd rather just have it on the field so that I get the guaranteed search. Because I know the Lovely Lady is coming out. And this also prevents the Chandelier from actually triggering or being in the grave, which is nice. So I'm going to try and get my... Or I'm going to get my search during the end phase, and they're going to pop a card. They actually pop the Daruma Karma Cannon, which is very funny. But they're going to activate their Lovely Lab, their Lovely Lab in order to set their Big Welk, and then they're going to send another card. Now, I do decide to banish the driver. I don't know if this is the correct play. I could have potentially stopped something like a Lovely Lady, or a Lovely Labyrinth from getting its effect to set an additional trap card by keeping the Sarnier in my hand, but I do feel like putting on the pressure with the Sarnier is probably better. I grab the Albion to my hand from the Magnemite, and I'm like, okay, I should be good. And out comes Opening, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is fantastic. Now, if they do decide to actually activate the, because I know that they have the Q Clock, I'm like, cool, now if they actually decided to go for the Lovely and activate its effect in order to grab an additional trap, that they would like activate that turn, I can still go for the Branded Opening to basically chain block that. So I was like, okay, great, this is a fantastic draw. They're gonna go for the Q Clock here. I don't know why they decided to do this the way that they do, but they do. And you'll see why I'm confused about this in a second. They're gonna bounce back the Lady Lab, and I'm like, that's fine. They're gonna pop my Aluber. I'm like, that actually doesn't matter. I just didn't want them to hit the opening. We're gonna go for the Albion, and I draw Albaz, which is very, very funny. But then I just normal summon the Cartesia and activate its effect in order to Fusion Summon it into Borreload Furious. This card is so good for no reason. Sarnier does get to trigger, and guess what? We have a Retribution in our graveyard from the previous turn of sending a, I forget what we sent, or how we got this in the grave, but we did. And now we get to go for the Branded Fusion and sending that to the graveyard. I'm going to force out their Daruma Karma Cannon, so it does make sense as to why they didn't activate all of their cards in the draw phase, but that's fine. They're going to get everything flipped face down, but I'm just going to go for the Retribution to grab up Branded Fusion. And I know, I'm pretty certain there's one card left, and it is an Unknown, but the other one is a Lovely. So I'm like, that's fine. We'll go for the Branded Fusion here. We'll go for Albion, activate the effect of the Albion, and we're going to go and Fusion Summon. I also send the Lubellion to the graveyard, the Bestial Lubellion. Now we can go for the Lubellion of our own. I actually use the the Borreload Furious just to get it back into the grave. And out comes the Bestial Lub. So I'm like, okay, this should be good. I'm going to try to go to battle. My opponent goes for Nib! Okay. Out comes Nibiru. I have a big old token. I'm like, that's fine. I'm actually going to just special summon the Owlbear here. Yes, I could have, like, potentially done something with, like, opening. But honestly, it's not really that big of a deal. I'm just going to summon it just to have it on the field. And out comes the Blazing Cartesia. We're also going to go for the Albion. And set the Branded Banishment. My opponent, during the end phase, goes for the Lady Labyrinth, because I did end up sending the Banishment here. So they could chain to my activation of the Branded Banishment. Like, oh, I kind of misplayed. Sure, I could have gone for a Branded in red, but I still think Branded Banishment was probably better. Being able to, like, summon back a Mirror Jade here, in order to have that, as well as, since I already have the Owlbear on field, I could fusion summon using the Owlbear in order to get an additional monster onto my field, so I'm feeling pretty good. Now, notably, I was a little confused, because I was like, don't you just die? Because the Mirror Jade was activated. They had a set card. That set card was Lovely Labyrinth. It was set monster, but it still counts as a set card, so I could not destroy it by card effect. Hilarious! That is so funny that that works. They're just going to go to the battle phase. They're going to walk over the Owlbear. I'm like, that's totally fine. I don't really want to give them the Branded Banishment activation on their turn. That seems much worse. So they're going to go for the big welcome and just goodbye token. I draw Maxi, which is very funny. I'm going to activate the Branded Banishment here to special summon out a monster. They're going to chain it to it with the Lovely Labyrinth, and then they're going to chain the Maxi, and I'm like, that's totally fine. Except it's not, because I'm actually going to activate the Branded Opening so that I can get another monster onto my side of the field. Okay, so we should be good here. At this point, we should be able to clean up this game pretty efficiently, even though they do have us under Maxi. I get to grab the Retribution, which is absolutely insane, because it entirely shuts down that set card that they just set, so I'm feeling pretty good. We're going to banish their monster. I'm going to normal summon the Cartesia that we have in our hand, just walk in for half of their life points, and then activate, or set the Branded in red, and set the Retribution. I'm feeling pretty good. They do have 2 cards in hand, which could be something. They're going to activate their big welcome, and I'm going to go, no, I'm going to shuffle back 2 of my cards and negate with the Retribution. Retribution is very good against Labyrinth, it turns out. They're going to go for the Oriana here. They're going to grab it to their hand, and then just walk over my Cartesia. And sure, I could have, like, tried to fusion summon there, but the reason that I didn't is because I wanted to specifically have 2 monsters for the Branded in red, and if I go for the fusion, I would have just, like, gotten nothing off of that, and you'll see why in a second. They're going to set 2. During the end phase, I go, okay, I'm actually going to fusion summon here with my Branded in red. I'm going to fusion summon away everything to go for Guardian Chimera and just pop their 2 back row, right? I also get to draw Branded in High Spirits, which doesn't really matter, because guess what? We have Branded Fusion, and of course, a Branded Retribution in our grave, so we can just go for the Branded Fusion again, and yeah, at this point the game is over, and my opponent concedes, realizing I still have Retribution in grave. So, good game. Alright, we're back with the deck, and in all honesty, I don't know how this deck performs so well, so consistently. Branded just constantly has good decks. It's kind of funny how much support that this deck has had, and yes, even with just the 1 Branded Fusion, you can still fusion summon like a madman, thanks to all of the myriad of other ways that you can fusion summon, like for example, Branded Banishment, Branded in red, Branded in white, Blazing Cartesia, etc., etc. The list goes on. Heck, even their own monsters fusion summon. Just fusion summon for days. I don't really have anything else to say. This deck just continues to overperform in ways that I do not expect. It just is so incredibly consistent, and the better of a player that you are, and more specifically, the better you are at deck building, which I just am not. It astounds me how well these people can put together a branded list, because I look at it and I just get overwhelmed. I cannot fathom what I should or should not be playing. But if you're a better deck builder, it really does show, as you see here with Karibo. I think that this is something that probably won't last in a meta, but is something that, like, will just do so well for a while. Now, I don't know if this is exactly, like, the best list. Obviously, I don't know for certain if there even is a best list ever in a game. But all things considered, this is a very, very strong deck. I don't think it's the best deck by any stretch of the imagination. I still think it's pearly, but I do think that there is a lot of room for Branded to actually perform. With 60 card list and with 40, I still think that a 40 card list can still do quite a lot. I did have a lot of fun with this deck though, even though I'm really bad with 60 card lists. My luck is just not great when it comes to drawing the cards that I need to. I always draw the dead one-ofs, like for example, the Daruma Karma Cannon. I think I saw this like 4 times today. like hard drawing it, so it's not exactly the greatest. I don't think I ever saw Thrust with this deck, which is very, very funny. But yeah, all things considered, very much so like this deck. Branded Always is just fun to play as well, which is very, very nice. That's basically it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy it. If you did, I like us very much, so appreciate it. And if you want to tell me whether or not you think that this is a good list, or if it's bad, or if it's what have you, go ahead and let me know down in the comments. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.